What's wrong with the left? Well, generally, they're not trying to craft policy based on what's actually going to improve people's quality of life. They're trying to craft policy based on what feels good, like having a high minimum wage. That feels very good for them to say, people ought to be paid $15 an hour and no less. But it's not an actually good policy, right? Especially for low-wage employment, right? It literally discriminates people working for low wages. It makes it illegal to work for low wages. It causes layoffs and closures, and it throws a wrench in the economy, and it incentivizes big corporations to invest in automation, which creates less opportunities for low-wage labor. It's not a good policy, and this is what people on the right are more concerned about. What are the actual consequences of these policies going to be, right? Because to people on the right, it's like, well, of course you can't just write into law how you think the world ought to be. Of course that's not going to work. There are always going to be trade-offs with this sort of thing. But, for the left, they view it like, well, no. Of course, the point of laws are, this is how society ought to be. They treat laws as, this is the blueprint for society, right? So, and this is why so many of their policies are really idealistic sounding. Like, everyone ought to have health care, everyone ought to have free college. We ought to just take in all the immigrants who want to come here, right? There ought not be discrimination, right? So we should have anti-discrimination laws. Okay, anything that's immoral should be, combated by the government. That's basically how the left views this sort of thing. But the thing is, there are always consequences with these laws. You can't just use the law as, a paintbrush for what you want society to look like. Okay, if you regulate healthcare, you make it harder for the healthcare market to evolve and improve. If you enable women to sue their employers for gender discrimination, you make it so that there's less incentive for employers to hire women because they're more liable to be sued if they hired women. Okay, if you force banks to give loans to people with low credit who wouldn't otherwise receive loans from the bank, that screws over the vulnerable people who are trying to get a loan, right? Because then they're going to get a loan that they can't pay them back. That's why the banks don't want to give them the loan, is because they doubt that the person is able to pay back the loan. Otherwise, they would happily give the loan, right? Because the loans are profitable to the banks. Okay, this is the thing. The left wants to treat everything as virtue signaling, and this is why, if you don't agree with their policy, they're like, oh, so you really hate the poor then, right? Because you think that the poor ought not to have health care. No, it's not like that at all. No, it's not. The point is that we're not supposed to use laws just to virtue signal and say how society ought to be. Okay, laws are a very delicate thing. That's not what this discussion is about. Okay, it's about what the actual effect of these laws are going to be on society and on people's quality of life.